One thought here from the Vancouver 4 text line says, Oregon was hiding 95% of their offense. Huge shout out to Stewart for trading stats for team success. I don't know how much. I mean, I don't have any idea how deep Will Stein's playbook is, and how much, and how I also don't know, from a football perspective, how vanilla today's play calling was. But it does feel like, with the exception of Ohio State, he's been able to keep most of his tricks in his bag, and a lot of the stuff that he's able to run with his team is just, we like our guys better than your guys, and we can run the basic stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a talent disparity. I mean, like, there's a reason why you recruit at the way you do, so that you can have these games where you don't have to get into your bag. Because, look, when you get into the playoffs, you're probably going to have to get into your bag a little bit, and you're going to have to do it week in and week out. And I like how everyone comes in and talks about, well, how deep is the playbook? How deep is it? How deep is it? All Will Stein does, like, even when he's like at home, like having dinner with his family, he's a football guy. He's probably thinking about different ways that he can beat the Illinois defense. And that's
matchup scheme.
It's not
how
an
can I
attack.
Get this guy?
People who are successful in anything, like if you're successful in business, guess what? You're at dinner with your wife and your kids, and you're like, I can't wait to get back to the office tomorrow. Like, that's just kind of how those people are.
Or you're
wired.
having the conversation about, like, well, you know, what we need on the grocery list, and you're going, and you're like, what do I do against zone coverage when I have the ball in 3rd and long?
Right.
You're
like that's just what you do, right? And especially for football coaches, because it's the fall, it's go time, it's now. You can think about, I'm so excited to be at dinner with my wife and kids in the spring. That's what the spring and winter are for. Like, look, I'll tell you right now, there have probably been times where Coach Lanning is like going home and like his kid messed up, did something they didn't want to do, and he's like, I could be on the recruiting trail right now.
Probably.
This would be so much better for my time. But what I'm going to say here is, when it comes to playbooks, most teams put in schemes and concepts, and then each week you look at the team that you're playing against and how can we use these concepts or these formations or these schemes with our personnel and set our personnel up in the best spot to attack the weaknesses of the other team. So when I was in college, we never had a playbook that was handed to me. You just went in each week, and the coaches on Monday would say, these are the plays that we like versus these looks, and this is how we want it run. And so you go in and you drop all the plays in your playbook, and you know how we want to attack this and how we want to attack that. And then you go out on Tuesday and you run everything. And some things work and some things don't. And you come back and, okay, we're going to tweak this, we're going to tweak that. And then Wednesday you go out and everything looks a lot cleaner. And then on Thursday is your final run through. And then that's when the coaches go, okay, so we thought we liked this concept, but maybe our players can't get there this week and they just don't have it. So dive concept is out this week. We're going to run more mid zone. Hey, we really like the flood concept and our players have shown this, but we think that if we put Tez in the slot, it's going to get him matched up against the safety, and that's a better matchup for us. So this week, instead of having Tez on the outside at the X, we're going to have him at the H inside. And so a lot of times people will say, well, how deep into the playbook is he getting? He's not really getting deep into the playbook. It's what is he able to design in concepts that these players already know and that they already use week in and week out.
How do you almost forge a different path to get the same success?
Right, because look, there's only so many ways to run the football. There's only so many ways to throw the football. But what you do is you set your players up in different positions, or you get different looks or different formations to scheme your players up to get the best one-on-one matchup. And then defensively, you're doing the same thing. Hey, Oregon likes to run the flood concept. Well, they like to throw to their second option here in the middle. They don't want to throw deep because a flood, you have a deep player, you have a middle player, you have a short player. Hey, they like to throw the middle. So guess what? We're going to set our best cover guy. We're going to make sure that he's dropping into a zone in here. Or, hey, we think we have a guy that's fast enough to cover Evan Stewart. He's going to shadow Evan all game. And as long as he doesn't give up the deep ball, it's a victory for us. So when it comes to talking about playbooks, everyone has the same concepts. Everybody has the same schemes for the most part based on what you run. It's what can you design that week that you can get your players to understand and execute at a high level.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. Every week I watch the Ducks versus Them video segment that the Ducks video team puts out, and the recap from Ohio State was like 20 minutes long because there was so much good stuff in there. But there was really great stuff from the coaches' meetings and from the offensive meetings leading up to the Ohio State game. And Lanning kept preaching during the coaches' meetings, I want to think players, not plays. And what he's not saying is that scheme doesn't matter, but he's like, let's work backwards. Let's figure out how we want to score and with who, and then figure out how we're going to make that happen. And he goes, when we're in a tight spot, what do I want? I want Jordan James running behind Josh Connerly. How do we make that happen? What's the best way for us to do that? And now you have just this wealth of talent and an embarrassment of riches. And so you can ask, I mean, so I feel like Will Stein's sitting there playing whack-a-mole with how do I get Evan Stewart the ball? How do I get Tez Johnson? And having that ability, there's just all these permutations that you get to go through. And maybe to your point, it's less about the playbook and how do I find the best ways to give these guys the matchup nightmares that they always create.
Oh, yeah. Well, the part that will always blow my mind is how much time is spent doing just drawing up plays and drawing up ideas. But at the end of the day, like I played D2 football. Guess what? My offensive coordinator, he's on the staff at Oregon. So I kind of have an idea of what's going on offensively and special teams because it's like, oh, yeah, I remember those plays when that coach drew them up for our team. He was guess what his main mantra was? Players over plays. That was his big thing. He wanted to find matchup nightmares that he could get his players the ball in. And what certain coaches are able to do where, hey, we're going to drop this formation into this look, into this down and distance, and this is the defense that they'll come out in, and then we'll hit a big play here. And you think that, oh, well, they only do that for the big trick plays. No. They do that for every play. And how they can match it up wise and how did it look on film? Do we like how it looks on film? Because sometimes you go out there and practice and you might think that, hey, we can run this mid-zone concept into the boundary versus this look, and you get to your players and the scout team players are just working your offensive linemen. It's not because your offensive linemen are weak. It's just that's a bad matchup for what that offensive line possesses. So now you have to figure out what does that offensive line possess skill-wise. So how can we use their skills to their advantages and hide their weaknesses as best as we can. So the more and more that you just go into the real football nerd stuff, and I can nerd out here for the next 3 hours, like I'll just sit here and talk about formation into boundary versus this or unbalanced versus that.
I'll nerd out with you for the next 30 minutes or so. And
then I understand that. I got to go pick up a car.
Nice.
But what I'm saying is it's very clear from what Oregon has shown over the last 2 years is that defensively and offensively, you have two coordinators that are some of the best at scheming up their players' strengths to attack the weaknesses of the defenses that they are facing. The reason that Evan Stewart had a gigantic game against Ohio State is because they looked at Ohio State and they said, if we can get him matched up with Burke, that is a mismatch that we can take advantage of because he is weak getting out of his back pedal and keeping up with a guy that has the speed of Evan Stewart. And that's why Evan Stewart had a big game.
And Purdue couldn't even contain them without Terrence Ferguson and without Trayshawn Holden for the Ducks. Think about that. They weren't even at full strength on the offensive.
That's exactly right. Your number one tight end and probably your number 3 wide receiver, both missing from the game.
3rd and 4th options.
Don't miss a beat, and the guys filling in for him looked like they absolutely belonged. They absolutely looked the part. So